I was just thinking I've had one good crack today, but I haven't pissed as much. And I thought, well, it's because I was pissing excessively the last few weeks, or the last week or two, and so it's actually slowed down my pissing. And I've been drinking more water, so. You want to look at people. I mean, we could all call each other mentally ill, but look at people in your life, or that you've known, who work around or live around or related to people who are, by your estimation, if you will, in any discrete sense, mentally ill. And how people with certain kinds of mental illnesses will work together and flock together. And like good and bad police officers, some of them will be more aggressive. They're like, well, I don't like that one. But the other ones will stand around quietly, a little nervously, but they don't say anything because that person dominates them. And if you talk to them, they'll have a poor me story about, oh, well, they're this way, sorry. And they'll have sacred stories about why, oh, I think it's just because of this. And, oh, it's happened to other people too, but we don't know what to do. And all this weak energy as they go about their lives in strength and a dignity which you can now no longer enjoy. Fully absolved, in some sense, of having any part in the ploy which has now been reached some kind of violent conclusion in your particular life. And that they are abiding things which are eminently wrong and waiting till something happens to someone to let them know a bunch of bullshit about why they couldn't and cannot do anything, and nor can you. And shouldn't you feel bad for them? You see, again, cult psychology. Let's have a quick smoke and go home. Now, picture of a bear. I really miss my mom some days. I think I sort of tug back and forth as I deal with things. When I deal with violent things, they affect my home. They affect my relationship with my mother. They plant seeds of disquiet inside of me. And I might resort to magical thinking and say, but I know, like, there's a schizophrenic in a local health food store. This is a sick man. These are sick people. And I think of the people that work around them. And they're all sick. They're all accustomed or patterned to working around these type of schizophrenic human beings. Again, using the police as an example, you'll notice that they're all sick. There are people with certain kinds of sickness that are police. They're extremely sick. You know, the rooster crowing, right? They have different types of extraordinary mental illnesses. And they have incredible capacity for industrial-grade schizophrenia, which allows them as a group, good or bad, to affect all kinds of unnecessary aggression and violence upon other people. The fact that they know the law or they're keeping the peace turns out, whether they know it or not, is to be served as just an inexplicable yet inevitable pretext for the violence which they mete out, as with any even laudable and especially laudable sounding aim of the group and or the cult capacity of the group, which draws those aims into some considerable imputation. And to such an extent, given the often intense emotional identification for one's own survival with the group and its aims, that such aims are just not to be questioned. They can't be put to one side, even if there's something more important than your beliefs. There's the well-being of other people, given how things seem to be turning out for them, regardless of what everyone wants to believe. And there are, I think, many ways, more or less, that this could be useful to people without having to sound so menacing. But I'm sure I'm not the first person to see it. Okay, one water bottle done. Here's my bit of coffee. Get home and see my mom. So I'm looking forward to. Let's go, Joe. Let's go, Joe. That's what my uncle used to say. Let's go, Joe. And I think sometimes quite morbidly, what if my mom wasn't around? I mean, you can't base your life on fear. And but I don't have anyone else. I had a dream a couple nights ago that, I mean, it wasn't a sex dream, but it was like this beautiful woman, or just a woman that seemed beautiful to me, hugging me. And for a moment, it seemed like it could be a sex thing, but it was like we're just hugging. I've never been hugged that way in my life by someone who genuinely expected me to live. I've had fake hugs from creepy hookers. You know, I don't mind the fact that they want to put their arms around me from time to time. I don't really hug them back. It doesn't matter to me. You just watch their disgusting behavior unfold. They always have agendas. They're always fucked up. There's nothing really positive about knowing them, but they think they're amazing. And they function with a good deal of magical thinking. And shit, you know? Like, I've learned to really appreciate over the last few years, and I guess this is part of why I'm feeling such angst in a way, is that besides my mom, I don't have anyone that makes me feel comfortable. You know, I met Ken today, Pam. I've actually talked to people who are pretty nice local folks, so that was nice. It was a good people day, all in all, aside from being slightly bit by a dog. But aside from my mom, I don't have anyone I really like and feel comfortable around. She's it. And which, in a good sense, tells me, like, in all honesty, that that's true. And I feel it. You know, I want to get home. I wish I had something to do each day that maybe I could spend more time with my mom. I love getting home, and I know I need to get out. And if I need to get out for more extensive reasons, it kind of pisses me off. And I think, well, what if these things didn't happen to me? What if that manager didn't attack me? He had to. It was inevitable. And he told me all kinds of things, as they will when they're attacking. They told me as much about the owner and the owner's mentality, and a lot of the ways that the staff had treated me over the years, which was kind of like creepy, you know? That no matter how much I shot there, no matter how much I saw them, they never really became comfortable with me. You know? They were never comfortable. It's like we were worlds apart, you know? And then you see what happens. You see, like, the kind of lives these people are keeping up, you know? And it's like, you know, the health food industry itself draws a lot of people who want to be in a positive environment. And indeed, I, for many years, honestly thought that this environment, with exceptions, was an eminently positive place to go shopping for my organic food and whatnot. I really did. But it's been painted with a completely different brush now. When, you know, when the revelation comes, it is very, very difficult. When the masks are ripped off and no one is accountable for anything except you, the person who's done nothing wrong. And you are to be escorted off the premises after we finished cannibalizing you, slowly or not, and affecting different whimsical and predatory postures and positive postures to affect basically getting the most out of you and getting rid of you over an increasingly sharp contraction of every other trust that's been built up over a 12-year period. And then these people that you've talked to and bought stuff, now you see them very differently. Now they might as well all be sociopaths. They're creepy, creepy fucking human beings. And they will never live in my mind as anything more than creepy, creepy human beings. And the young people working there, some of them less than others, but when you look about what they're around in this health food store and what they're working around and how superficial these people are, how utterly superficial that from the woman who instigated all kinds of sexual assault that basically was completely revealing her unwanted sexual identification with me and becoming suddenly absolutely beside herself with wanting not to be around me because someone had slandered me to her. And the only reason she was affected the way she was is because I rightly deduced from the last time she was positive with me and made subtle advances to me about my physical body, almost saying that she could knit me some gloves and things like that, because, she'd had enjoyable conversation with me, and she was a very homely, obviously very isolated human being. And I don't mind interacting with people because I can relate to that, but she clearly had more than usual interest in me, or she wouldn't have become so much more than usually afraid of me, right? Because cords from her lower chakras had been attaching themselves to me. And once the slander came in about me being a rapist, which that comes from a source that is known to me, I know their MO and so forth, and I know why they were doing this, and had been stalking me for about 10 years. And it's pretty disgusting, right? And you kind of look. Yeah, I called social services on the person. You could see why. I mean, this woman spent 10 years blackening my good name with complete slander whenever any mutual acquaintance came her way. I mean, that's as sick as it gets. Because a welfare check came your way, check in with yourself, right? Tell the truth. And if you don't like it or you're upset, then be honest about it, But at the same time, she had sexually assaulted my mother and I, and all kinds of other stuff, but it's not the reason I called. That's not even the reason, And the person doesn't realize how much patience people have with them, And 10 years of stalking me that are now, I think, thankfully over, but the ball was passed to this local health food store that became the perfect environment, as healthy as it was, for this carcinogenic slander based on the kinds of cords that different females had attached to me in the store that were problematic already in the types of aggression I'd already seen and came to see increasingly. And then from the male manager over a period of weeks, where he was affecting an unusual amount of new types of etiquette toward me, and using my name and stuff like that in a way that the owner had been doing for years, which tells me that the owner really wasn't particularly fond of me either, and essentially was scapegoating me for a lot of the perverse attachments that many female staff were probably making toward me in my frequent visits to the store, which could have been misinterpreted or interpreted as me preying on them. I simply like the positive environment. And quite frankly, all titillation to one side, could probably do without young women glaring at me and falling in love with me. I probably would have been okay with that. I wouldn't have complained in its absence. And a man can only do so much when you have young women looking at you and making nice. You can only do so much. You know what I mean? And I always just think sick when I think of that. And the last time I wrote to him about a lawsuit I was considering, I just said, Mike, this guy is sick. But I mean, by association, really, and by connotation, so would I. And there's just a sickness that is not to be abided. But only the scapegoat knows that. And people say, well, but how do you think it is affecting that environment? How do you think it's affecting the food people purchase there? Hey? And then how do you draw at least successive orders of perspective that don't need to take leave from some little bit of oxygenation that we hope can be provided by the however difficult acquaintance with the abnormal psychology of the human race, that one can build a positive philosophy that doesn't need to dislocate itself, as many human minds do, from the particularly problematic claims upon their incredible understanding, our incredible patience, right? So, good videos today, isn't it? Good work. Didn't snow today. So I'll be home in half an hour, hopefully. Whew, I didn't check the time, but I'm guessing it's got to be about 3 by now. Wow. Didn't snow, and so it can only melt like that. But my heart is hurt. That's my heart. I think the BC Transit got the police involved 3 times. I think, and didn't tell me why. Never told me why. It's pretty freaky, you know. I think because I use words like the person threatened me. Instead, you have to word it like, oh, well, if you did this, and I felt threatened by that, or I found that threatening. And they were just looking for any keyword they could do to send me over to the police, who don't drive buses and don't know anything about what's happened and are the least qualified. And so they're anxious as possible, as professional bus people, to get rid of someone who has particularly bus-related problems onto someone who has known nothing about such problems or knows the least about it. And to force you to put into such terms as a police officer in their world might be disposed to appreciate, right? I mean, imagine someone who's never seen a pool that doesn't know about lifeguards. And you said you were drowning or something and called for a lifeguard and didn't know what that was. And they pretended like they couldn't hear you. And they're like, well, what if like it wasn't really their job, or they were just busy doing or thinking about something? And you're like, but it's their job. It's their job. You watch them walking around the pool like animals. They have to keep track and scan. Otherwise, what's the point of being a lifeguard, right? If you don't see people drowning, right? And it didn't matter how much I talked to this one cunt of an RCMP officer, because she's an RCMP officer and for many other reasons, like she doesn't take the bus, she was quite gifted at avoiding any critical appreciation for knowing, much less learning about, what type of harassment I'd actually suffered by, and what happens at a bus stop and what shouldn't happen at a bus stop. And as to how I felt about what was happening, it meant nothing to her. And I've been around predators where you say, I'm uncomfortable. This was scary for me. And they don't give a fuck. And all kinds of people with certain illnesses, like women, can get all kinds of other people with illnesses, like men, or men to lower their inhibitions, to protect themselves from the scapegoat, and then to digest the scapegoat. Protect, then digest. Protect, then digest. Protect as you digest, right? Ooh, scapegoat, bad. Consume them with the cathartic power of our righteous hatred. Consume them with the imperative, survival-based, cathartic consumption of this awful person. Our hunger, right? Protect us from them by digesting them.